So if you're on our email list, then you've already heard the good news, but we are running an Unashamedly You sale, you guys, for the rest of February. Everything on our website is up to half off, even private coaching. When you sign up for coaching in February, you're going to get half off of your first month. Don't forget, your first session is completely free. So make sure to head over to unashamedlyu.com and get that scheduled. These coaching sessions are for anyone that is either wanting to start something, even if you're not sure exactly what it looks like, or if you've started something but you're feeling stuck and you need help restarting those ideas and dreaming big again. I know what it's like to have those goals and dreams, but no idea how to get started. And then I know what it's like to get started, but not sure how to get to that next level. God has an abundance waiting on you, and I cannot wait to help you get there. Let's grow together. Hello, and welcome to the Unashamedly You podcast, a space to enlighten, encourage, and empower you to go out and unashamedly be who God is calling you to be. I am your host, Jamie Herndon. I pray you hear less of me and more of Him as you listen to today's episode. Let's grow together. So we are celebrating love the month of February with all of our episodes. And this week is so special because we are bringing on someone that is no stranger to the Unashamedly You community. She's been on a podcast here, and she was with us at the last Unashamedly You conference as a speaker and spoke so much life into all of us. Her love story is one that shares strength and healing, and I just cannot wait to dive into this topic with you today, Medley, because it is just something that I know that you're very passionate about. You and your husband speak on so often, and I can't wait to hear all of your perspectives and things that you have to say. So thanks for being with me again. And for those that may not know who you are just yet, take a moment to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Jamie. I feel so honored each time. It's just as much of a privilege as it was the time before. And I never feel worthy or anything like that. But yeah, let's dive in. My name is Medley Bokun. I grew up in Mississippi, moved to Louisiana about 14 years ago. My parents have always been in the ministry, so I've always been a preacher's kid, evangelist kid, and for the last 14 years, a pastor's kid. So know all about that life, and that's the only life I've ever known, and I feel very blessed and privileged to have had that. I have two younger sisters. I went to a small university here in South Louisiana, and I graduated in 2017 with my nursing degree. And along the way, I met my husband, which we'll talk about today, and got married. I always worked in the church and learned how to do lots of things. You teach yourself a lot of things when it's a small church, and really thankful for that because it grows you and it pushes you, and you realize that there are a lot of things that you are capable of. So that's kind of who I am.
And we are grateful that you are on here with us. So I mentioned we're sharing our love stories this week, and we're women, so we want all the details. So tell us the beginning love story and how you guys met.
Oh, well, it's actually pretty funny. Not how we met. So my best friend at the time was planning an event for the district for our section here in Louisiana. And so being her best friend, she had asked me if I would help, and I didn't really want to. I had a lot on my plate at the time. I was in my first semester of nursing school, and if you've ever been to nursing school, you know how overwhelming and daunting that is. But I agreed, and she had asked two guys that she knew fairly well to also help, and Kevin was one of those guys. They had known each other from camp days and different things like that. And so that is how we first met, was planning this event together at a little beignet place in Baton Rouge. And so we had our meeting and, tried to get a lot of this event organized and planned out. And it was a new embarkment for all of us. And So that's how we initially met. And what's ironic and kind of funny about that is when we left that initial meeting, I left thinking, wow, that guy is just a know-it-all. Like, Lord have mercy, he's so annoying. And he left saying to himself, man, that girl is really cute, but she is so stuck up. So that's how we first met, and those were our first impressions of each other. So I'm here to say first impressions are not always accurate.
That is hilarious.
So yes. And then time went on, we put on the event together, and I think we talked more at the event and kind of got to know each other a little bit better and transitioned a little bit from like, okay, he's not maybe so much a know-it-all. He is, but he's just also really, really smart. And so he tends to talk over people without realizing that he's talking over people. But anyway, we kind of became friends, like nothing really, I wasn't really interested. I didn't think that he was I didn't even really think about it, to be honest. And life went on. We did discover that we went to the same university, but we just had never crossed paths before. So after we'd probably known each other for about a year, maybe a little bit less than that, when he kind of started texting me here and there and asking to meet up at school. And I just thought we were friends. And I didn't know he had any ulterior motives, but he did. I did not know that at the time. And I had a lot going on personally at that time also. And so there were several times that like I couldn't meet up with him or whatever. And so he finally said something, I don't remember. And I remember asking him, I'm like, I hope I'm not like misunderstanding you or misinterpreting anything, but like I kind of just said like I wanted to be friends. Like he hadn't even said anything. And so I was trying to like kind of put that out there before he could even say anything. And he responded, he was like, no, it's nothing like that. I just want to be friends. And he was not telling the truth really at the time, but I didn't know that. I believed him. Time went on. We saw each other at a couple more events. He wound up meeting one of my sisters at some youth function somewhere, and they were talking, and somehow that led to him tutoring my sister for the ACT because she was getting ready for the ACT. And so that happened. So then all of a sudden, fast forward, he's at our house every Friday night for multiple weeks because he's so eagerly and just sweetly tutoring my sister for the ACT. And so he was really trying to get his foot in the door. And again, I still believe that he was not interested. I wasn't interested. My sisters didn't really believe it. They were like, yes, he is. He is interested. And I was like, no, he's not. We've already talked about this. But anyway, fast forward, he winds up asking me out because of the situation. I felt like I had to say yes because I didn't really want to. And I told my sisters, I'm like, I am not interested in him. But I'm just going to be nice. I'm just going to go. I'm going to do the nice thing. I'm going to go. I'm going to have a good time. And then I'm going to, politely and sweetly just let him down. And then, I don't know, something happened on the first date. I was like, okay, maybe I don't know, maybe I am interested, like maybe like 10%. I'm not sure. So anyway, we had a great time, and I guess you could say the rest is history.
I'm laughing so hard because you're like, he got his foot in the door. Like he legit got his foot in the door, came in your house every Friday night, all the
Oh
times
yes,
he would want to be hanging out.
absolutely. And that was his plan. Like he did tutor for work. He did tutor at the university, and he tutored people on the side. So that was not uncommon for him to do that. But I don't think ACT prep was his typical tutoring. It was more like tutoring college kids through organic chemistry and things of that nature. But he knew I was really, really close to my family. He knew I was really close. I had a great relationship with my parents and my sisters. And so he was really smart. He knew, he was like, if I can get close to the sisters and to the parents, and if I can, get around them, then maybe she'll come around.
He definitely had a good plan that worked.
It
Um,
did. It worked.
so so go him. If there's any guys listening to this, or if you girls have a guy that is interested in you and you're listening to this, you go on the date, have a good time.
Right.
You never know
And
what might happen.
that's right. I will say, and I tell girls that all the time. I'm like, it it's it doesn't have to be love at first sight. You don't have to have a great impression the first time. And it never, one date, it usually doesn't hurt anything. And if you're still not interested at the end of the first date, that's okay. It's just part of the dating scene, unfortunately. But had I not gone on the first date, we would have never gotten together. So
So true. I tell girls that too. I'm like, what's wrong with the free meal? Like,
yeah,
that's a good thing
absolutely.
to go and have. We all have to
Absolutely.
eat. Just go eat with someone and eat for free. If
Exactly.
they don't pay for it now, don't go again.
That's
Um,
yes, red flag.
they're going to be paying for a lot of things after if you do get married. So make sure they at least pay for your food at the beginning.
Correct.
Um, so I love that story that you shared. And like you said, the rest is history. So you guys got married. And then everyone says the first year is the hardest because we all know there's changes that you have to make. And it is hard for everyone to learn to live together for that first year. But no one expects their first year to bring actual tragic events like yours did. So you guys got married and share a little bit of the rest of your story.
So we got married in the summer of 2019, and Kevin was 2 years through medical school. He had taken his first board exam, and he was in school in Shreveport, which is in North Louisiana. We lived in South Louisiana. So we got married, and I moved to Shreveport. And 3 weeks after our wedding, we were renting a house, and there was a gas explosion in the home, and we were home. And so, to make a very long story quite short, or as short as I can make it, we were home. There was a gas explosion. We were in different parts of the house. Kevin was able to get out first, and it took me longer to get out just because of where I was and all these things. And so, to fast forward, there was a lot of things that happened. I was burned 96% of my body, mostly third degree. Kevin was also burned about 35%, mostly second degree. I was in the hospital for about just short of 6 months, went through a lot of things. It's honestly a miracle that I'm alive. I shouldn't be here at all. But every single thing that happened that day, God had a plan for it. And I know we've talked about some of this on the previous podcast, but just every single thing had to go right in order for me to still be here. And God just had his hand in every detail. And so, yes, 3 weeks into marriage, and now we're both in the ICU, and they don't know if I'm going to make it. They expect Kevin to make a recovery, but he did spend a few nights in the ICU. He transitioned out of the ICU pretty quickly. He still had a lot of surgeries and things like that. But I was in the ICU for about 3 months, and the beginning, the first couple of days were very touch and go. And, the doctors would just say, we'll see. We're just going to have to see, because they really didn't know if I was going to make it or not. So that was very tough, especially for Kevin, obviously our families, but, being a brand new husband, and, so immediately feeling like you just didn't do your job. You didn't protect, you didn't do all the things that, your father-in-law just gave you this girl to protect her, to keep her, to love her. And that's a part of his story, is that, just all the emotional and just all those things that he went through as a brand new husband, and to being in this position, it's really hard to fathom. So I was in the hospital, like I said, just short of 6 months in the ICU for 3 of those months, had tons of surgeries, was slowly moved down to a regular hospital floor, was slowly transitioned to like a rehab facility where I spent the rest of my months in that rehab facility. And then I was discharged at the very end of 2019. And my care was still so significant and so great. And I relied on people for so many things. We actually, when I got discharged, finally, we moved back to South Louisiana, where both mine and Kevin's families are. And we actually moved in with my parents and my sisters. And so that was another huge thing. Newlyweds, if you will. And we just spent 6 months in the hospital. I almost died. And now we're living with my family. And at the point that I was discharged, I still couldn't really do anything for myself. So it was a very tough time.
Yes, I can only, I mean, I can't. You cannot even really truly imagine what you guys were going through at that time. But you had talked on the previous podcast and shared at at the Unashamedly You conference that trying to find yourself and to refocus on even who you are now. You're somebody that has always been super independent and, you've got your nursing degree, you've done all these things on your own. You get married, he's going to medical school, like you had said before. If you guys have not listened to the previous podcast, you need to go back and listen to that episode. It is episode 20, and she shares her full story there. But you're walking through these things and you're also learning to live with so many new challenges, and you're still newlywed.
Oh, man. Every single thing about that that time, that transition was an intense challenge. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat that it was a flowery time. It was the worst. It truly was. I mean, we were we were all happy that I was at a point to where I could be discharged from the hospital because I mean, you spend 6 months just about in the hospital, you just feel like that's your new life and that's going to be your life forever. And it's hard to see past that. And so we were all happy in a sense that we were moving into the next step. That felt huge, that felt monumental. And it was it was a comfort to be moving back in to my house with my family into my bedroom, like, for me and where I was emotionally and psychologically, that was a huge comfort to me because we had been married for 3 weeks. I've spent 25 years with these people, not in this house, but with these people and with this routine and with this, and so it was like 25 years versus 3 weeks. Well, of course it had been longer than 3 weeks, but in hospital, it's just not, it doesn't really, I don't know if it really counts. But, so for me, that was a comfort. But for Kevin, that was extremely hard. Like, he just felt like a failure, just a failure as a husband, like a failure that he couldn't take care of me on his own. And so as a guy, as a man, he's dealing with all these things and I'm dealing with all these things. When I came home from the hospital, like I still couldn't feed myself. I mean, we're talking like I could not do anything. They had to help me stand up. They had to help me sit down. They had to help me lay down. Like I could not do anything on my own. Once they got me into a standing position, I could walk a little bit on my own. I could take a few steps, but it was just a very rough time. And we were doing dressing changes every day and wound care. And with Kevin, my mom, at least one of my sisters, if not both of my sisters, every single day that took 3 to 4 hours. It was such a horrible, it was horrible for them. It was horrible for me. I was in so much pain. They were, just doing what they had to do, but distraught over it. And at the same time, you're dealing with all of these things, like I'm still in such extreme pain. We both have major frustrations. I'm frustrated, like at life. How am I going to do this? How is life going to go on? What does life look like for me? I'm a fiercely independent person. and I always have been. And so that transition was so hard for me. I honestly feel like it might have been a little bit harder coming home and being at home and not being able to do things than in the hospital and not being able to do things, if that makes sense. Because in the hospital, it was just survival mode, like just get through the next few minutes, just get through the next hour. At home, it was pain management was a little bit better than in the hospital. And, but as the physical pain kind of lessens, then you have room for all those emotions and all of the psychological things and the frustration. And so Kevin was dealing with PTSD because of the things that he saw, like he saw the gas thing spark right before it exploded. And so he had like all this PTSD related to the fire that at the time I didn't really have. I developed it later, kind of in a different sense, but he was dealing with that. We were both depressed. We were both angry. We were both, I had a ton of anxiety about the future and learning to try to let people help me because I was utterly helpless. So I had no choice. And, I will say God always knows what he's doing because Kevin is an extremely sweet and kind and a very, very nurturing person. He's one of the most nurturing people I've ever met. And that's typically unusual for a man. But, God knew what he was doing when he put us together because he knew that we were going to go through this and that, we were going to come to this point where a lot of men would struggle so much to take care of a wife that couldn't do anything for herself. And, he just rose to the challenge. It bothered him to see me in pain and that he couldn't fix things. A lot of his struggles were like psychological and emotional struggles as a man. But as far as like having to take care of me, he didn't really struggle with that. He was happy to feed me. He was happy to, do all the things. And he was very good at it. He was going to be a doctor. So he didn't get easily grossed out. Like when you're in God's will, he always knows what he's doing. He always knows how he's putting things together. But it was a very challenging time for sure.
I was going to say that, about him already going to medical school, already that's the line of work. I'm sure he wasn't necessarily going to take care of burn patients, but he was going to medical school to take care of people. He had that in him already. And then you being an RN, but the emotional side of it, we can't fathom. But in everyone's sense, you fall in love and you get married and life happens. And it's not just flowers and butterflies anymore. It's not just the dates and the fun things, it's work. And even though we don't have the challenges, obviously, that you guys had, there's still challenges that are there. But what are some things that you committed to make sure that your commitment to God and to one another was not going to be defeated by this tragedy?
I've in preparing for this podcast, I've thought back to a lot of things. Honestly, the farther removed you are from something, you kind of tend to forget sometimes. And so I've had to, just gone back and tried to think. And that time, those next couple of years were so rough as far as our marriage goes. But what I will say is, yes, you're right. Everyone faces challenges. Everyone faces struggles. Our story is different than a lot of people's, but there's a lot of people out there with different stories that we don't have. And I think one thing that I thought about, and I was actually talking with Kevin about this last night, even, prior to actually getting married, we knew that there was no way that we could do this on our own. There was no way that we could make this marriage work without God. And because even in our dating and our engagement periods, like we fought a lot. I was in school, he was in medical school. We lived, long distance. We almost never saw each other. So all our communication was via text and phone calls, and very easy to misunderstand somebody through a text message. And it happened all the time. And we were I graduated and then I went to working nights at the hospital as a nurse. And so I was working nights full time and he was in medical school. And it just, our whole dating and engagement period, like we fought, just being honest, we fought all the time. So even leading up to getting married, we knew and we could admit and we could say it out loud and really mean it. Like, there is no way, like, we feel like this is the right thing, but we know that we can't make this work. We cannot make this successful without God. And I think a lot of times we think that, but there's something even more powerful about admitting that out loud to each other. Because it's one thing to think like, oh yeah, got to keep God the center, da da da, yes, yeah, da da da. We'll all say that. We all kind of think that, but to be able to look your significant other, your spouse, your fiance, whomever in the eye and say, we have got to have God to make this work. Like that's a powerful thing because you're saying it out loud, and we believe in the power of the things that we say. The Bible talks about that. The other thing, and again, this is something that people say, but I feel like a lot of times, we fall short in actually meaning it. But we had said, for our whole relationship, like divorce was not an option. It wasn't an option, when we were engaged and we were, working through things and having problems. When we got married, we fought on our honeymoon, but we never got away from that thing that we both believed so deeply with this, that divorce was just not an option. And we had said that and we had put that out on the table and we had talked about it many times. And we both really believed that to our core. And again, that's something that we kind of say, but you've got to mean it. You've got to talk about it. You've got to mean it. And now I will tell you, after the fire and we're in recovery and living with my parents, I mean, divorce felt imminent for us every single day. And I am not even kidding. Like we said it, but it felt like, every day was going to be the last day. And I know we both felt like there's no way we can do this. There's no way we can make this. Like divorce felt imminent every single day. And there were so many things that we had to work through, and just little things that I was thinking about, like even in our most difficult times, where we just thought like, I don't know. I think this is the end. Like, I don't think we're going to make it. I know we said divorce wasn't an option, but I just, there are both times we were really discouraged and just like, we're just kind of like shrugging our shoulders like, well, this might be the end, but little things. And really, I have to give Kevin more credit for this than for myself, but it didn't matter how angry or upset we were, especially during this recovery time. It was not an option, in his opinion, for us to spend the night apart, ever. Like if you have a really big fight right before you go to bed and somebody's really mad and, they could go stay with a friend or they could go get a hotel or they could even just go in the living room and sleep on the couch. Like to Kevin, that was not an option. It didn't matter how angry. It didn't matter how bad the fight had been. It didn't matter. That didn't matter. He was so adamant about we were never spending the night apart. Nobody was sleeping on the couch. Like that wasn't an option to him. And that was definitely him. That was not me, because I would have just go sleep on the couch or I'll go sleep, But at the time, I didn't realize how significant that was. But it really was significant. It drew a line in the sand. It really helped, put down roots. Like, we said divorce was not an option and we really meant it. Even though we feel like our world and our marriage is falling apart, utterly and completely. And there were so many nights I was so mad and I would toss and turn and, all the things you do. Well, I guess maybe not everybody, but that's just how it was for us at the beginning. But, moving on to more the other things that we did, we eventually did marriage counseling, which was one of the best things that we did, obviously, other than our relationship with God. But finding the right marriage counselor is also important because they're not all created equal. Um, but going to marriage counseling, committing to that, and committing to keep going even when neither of us wanted to. And, if you've got two people against one, it's really easy to be like, oh, we don't need that. We can cancel. We can cancel this week. We're doing great, blah, blah, blah. And there were many, 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 many times that we really wanted to do that and we almost did. But deep down, I think we both knew that, we have to do things sometimes, even when we don't want to, even when it doesn't feel good. It's not pleasurable. It's very unpleasant. It's very vulnerable. Nobody likes being vulnerable. But our commitment to marriage counseling and to keep going, even when we didn't feel like we needed it, I feel like was huge. And we both definitely feel like our marriage counselor was a godsend for us at that time. And, even more than that, just like divorce wasn't an option, missing church wasn't an option for us. We didn't miss church. We didn't. I mean, at the beginning, yes, because my recovery, I was still recovering, not talking about that time. And we went right from my deepest recovery, just coming out of the hospital, into COVID. So that was fun. Everybody was shut down and everybody was watching online. And so that was a very interesting thing, too, to put COVID on top of this intense recovery. But missing church wasn't an option. And that includes like special events, that you could easily be like, oh, well, I don't really have to go to that. I don't, especially with the condition that I was in, I was still recovering and it was a very long road and it was very hard for me to go to church, especially in the beginning, just the sheer effort it took to get ready and to go. And it was so physically taxing. And so I still had so much pain. But as soon as I was able, to do it, we did it and we were there. And that's huge. In a marriage, you've got to have that. And it's not just about church services, but it's also about the extra events that people can kind of slough off sometimes. It's important for you to be at prayer meeting. It's important for you to be at all these other things, because each thing, at the house of God, it helps, it builds your marriage, it establishes your relationship. And you don't even realize it. And you never know what can happen, what God can do in a life, in a relationship, but you got to be there to receive it. And so missing church wasn't an option for us. And as my recovery, slowly got better, and as Kevin and I were able to get back involved with church responsibilities and taking things on, we did that. We waited until my recovery was stable enough, and we waited until we were in a better place spiritually and emotionally. And as our pastor, saw fit to give us things and to allow us to be involved in things. But as soon as we were able to do that, we stepped back into that. That's the only life I've ever known. And even though Kevin wasn't raised in a ministerial home, he had always been super involved. And so it was the only life he had ever known. And so getting back involved in all those church activity responsibilities and things as soon as we could, because those things just help ground you. And those are probably some of the main things that I thought about just over the last few days.
Everything that you said, talking about, the commitments that you guys made, so good. But I know no matter what stage of life you're in, it's like the devil throws things at you to keep you from what you were talking about, keep you from the God things that are going to ground you, and it's going to keep you.
Absolutely.
Whenever you first get married, you see it all the time. They're involved, but then now you've got marriage and, it's just easy to slack off. And then there's also other stages, you get kids and then it's easy to slack off. And then there's always going to be something that comes up that can keep you from doing those things. But whenever you're committed to your marriage, you're committed to one another, and you're committed to God most and foremost, it's going to end up with a happy ending, because God will carry you through whenever you feel like that you're not carrying yourself through anymore. But I love how real and raw that you've been. But what's one of the favorite things that you guys maybe do for one another now that is special and that you love about your marriage?
I think that I'll back up and say something cliche, And then I'll answer your question, but everything about your marriage, it flows out of, are you right with God or not? And that really is what it all comes down to. And it's such a cliche, but if if Kevin can stay right with God and if I can stay right with God, everything flows out of that. Your attitude, your tolerance, your willingness to bear one another's burdens and shortcomings. If you are in right standing with God, if you are in that place, we're usually sweeter people. We're more sincere. Like I said, we have more tolerance for each other's shortcomings, and we're slower to anger. We're better at being peacekeepers. We're better at letting those fruits of the spirit work. And the hardest part of that, we would all say that, and we all know that, and we all believe that, but making the commitment to pray and be in the Word of God every single day is so hard. It's so challenging because life happens. And, we're 5 weeks away from having our first child. And so I know we're about to go through a whole new learning curve of figuring out how to fit everything in. But, again, it's a commitment. It's something that you just got to make up in your mind, like somehow, some way, I am going to get this in today because I'm a better wife. I'm a better mom. I'm a better sister. I'm a better daughter. I'm a better everything when my mind is in line with the Lord and with Christ. So that's something that I wanted to say, that we feel so passionate and so that has made the biggest difference in our marriage, hands down. All the other things were just, really important, but not the most important. And so let's see, something that we do for each other. I think that we're both very in tune with the other person's, how can I say, mood? I guess I could say mood. So it's pretty easy for either of us to pick up when the other one is like, there's a little frustration, there's a little friction, there's a little something right beneath the surface. Maybe it hasn't come out yet. Maybe it's just starting to bubble up, but we're both very discerning people. And we know each other really well. And so we're both really good at picking up on that. And I think a way that we've changed is that it's in the way that we approach each other now. Used to be, it would turn into World War III, but now we're both very good at, instead of coming at the person and accusing them or whatever, we're both much better about being like, are you okay? Is there something I can help you with? You seem like you're really stressed today. Is there something on your plate that I can take off your plate today? Even if we're both feeling stressed, just having that other person come to you and say, I've noticed this. I want you to be okay. I love you. I appreciate you. Can I help you? What can I take off your plate? Even if they don't take anything off your plate, just the fact that we try to acknowledge each other's feelings and we try to acknowledge where that person is. And it's generally a reminder for that person to say, I appreciate you. And sometimes that's all we need to hear. Our plate may be slammed, but if Kevin comes up and he's like, I love you and I appreciate you. And can I help you with something? Sometimes I don't really need him to help me with something, but just him saying and acknowledging that, I feel so much better because I feel seen and I feel cared about. And I try to do the same thing for him. He's a very words of affirmation kind of person, and that's not my strong suit. Lord's still working on me. But, it's just that I find that it's just that acknowledgement. Really, it's for both of us. It's just acknowledging, I see everything that you're doing. I see everything that you've done. I appreciate it. Can I help you? Is there something you would like me to take off your plate? It's just that acknowledgement, I feel like, has made a world of difference for both of us.
knowing one another's love languages, that has been brought up already before, and it really is huge. Like, that book is a bestseller for couples for a reason, but you saying, like, his words of affirmation, like, just knowing that helps because, like, with Matt and I know I used to love him the way I wanted to be loved, and he loved me the way he wanted to be loved.
Absolutely.
And it's like,
Yep.
you're not meeting my need. You're meeting your
Yep.
own
So
need whenever
true.
you're doing that. So
Yep.
knowing, like, okay, it is words of affirmation. Maybe I should strum up some words in my head really quickly to go tell them.
Yes.
Because that's not my strong point, yeah. And usually your significant other, your spouse's love language is not going to be yours. And so
Absolutely.
it's not your strong suit. I don't know how that happens.
Absolutely.
The Lord's constantly working on all of us here.
Yes, yes.
Everything that you've said has just been amazing. Your story is so inspirational for everyone because, like I said, we all know the first year of marriage is hard. We all know these different struggles that we face,
Absolutely.
but then putting those struggles on top and this tragedy that you faced, that is unthinkable to even be able to live through, and to live through that with in a new marriage, all the changes that came with that. Your marriage is just a testament of the faithfulness of God, that if you're faithful to God, He's going to be faithful to you and help you through
Absolutely.
the hard things. And sharing this today has been so helpful for all of us, that you would share these things and give us something to do and to strive for. So it has been so helpful for all of us, the nuggets that you've given. But we like to ask, you already know this on the Unashamedly You podcast, what is one last thing that you would like to leave to us, the Unashamedly You community, on this subject?
I would say marriage is the hardest and the best thing that I've ever done. In life, in all the seasons, in all the ups and downs, the tragedy, the trauma, all the different backgrounds that people come from, the working through things, marriage is mostly not rainbows and sunshine. It's mostly not all those things that the world promotes in their way, in the Hollywood culture and whatever. It's mostly not that. But marriage is also one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done. It is the sole reason that I've worked so hard on myself, the sole reason that I've, gone to the Lord and asked the Lord to change me into the person that I needed to be. And when you do that, when you're committed, when you work through that, when you're willing to do all the hard work, when you're willing to do the hard things and go the distance, it's the most rewarding thing when you start to see the fruits growing out of your marriage, in your ministry together, whatever that is, in winning souls, in your relationship with each other. Because I feel like in so many ways, everything about your life, if you're married, flows from your marriage. You know, if there's strife, if there's contention at home, that overflows into every part of your life. It overflows into your ministry. It definitely affects your children, and it affects all the relationships in your life. But if you can get your marriage on the right track, and if you can get your marriage in line with God, and you and your spouse can get in line with God and just work, you begin to work in tandem, and God does so many things, and then you start seeing the fruits of that, and the fruits of your hard work. Everything flows out of that. Your ministry flows out of that. Your soul winning flows out of that. You're a better friend. You're a son, a better daughter. You're a better child of God. All because all the things you know come from what that home environment is like. And we know that of children when they're younger and when they're in certain environments. We have research for all of that, but our marriages are the same way. And when we can be in line with God, I mean, everything in our life flows out of that, and that makes our lives healthy. That makes our ministries healthy. That hopefully makes our children healthy, and ultimately it makes the kingdom healthy and strong, and that's what we're striving for. That is the goal.
That is exactly right. We see there is an attack on marriage.
Oh,
There
yes.
is there is an attack on marriage for the man and woman, and then now
Yep.
whatever you want to be and all these things. It all stems from the devil hates a healthy home. He hates a healthy marriage
Yes.
because you just said it exactly what it is. It makes for a healthy kingdom. It
Yes.
makes for healthy marriages, makes for healthy churches.
Yep.
And
It's
whenever we
absolutely
are
true.
all in a line with God and we are in a line in our home, it's what biblically God has put as the church. It's a marriage. So the bride of Christ. Like so many things in the
Yes.
being the bride of Christ goes back to how he wants our marriages to be. And that's one reason we
So
focused
true.
on these relationships and these things to be shared on the Unashamedly You podcast. So whether you are married, you're newly married, you've been married a long time, we pray that you feel strength and you feel strengthened by some things that were said. And I know that this week they definitely have, because you have shared so many things. Thank you for being so raw and so real. You do not have to go around sharing your story, sharing these things with other people, but because you are allowing God to use you in mighty ways to strengthen his kingdom and to help it. So we're forever grateful for all that you've shared. Thank you for being on the Unashamedly You podcast today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us for another episode this month on love and relationships. I am so grateful to have such an amazing community in this space. We'd be delighted if you'd leave us a review and let us know if this podcast has helped or encouraged you in any way. Your reviews and comments truly mean the world, and I pray that you find the encouragement you need week after week with each episode. Go be unashamedly you.